I never imagined a single smile could topple an entire department. But that's exactly what happened after 5 relentless years of business travel across the country. Yesterday afternoon, my manager, Dale Moreland, leaned back in his chair. Your travel costs cannot exceed $400 per trip. If you don't like it, you can quit. I didn't argue. I didn't defend the contracts I had spent half a decade building. I simply met his gaze, steady but exhausted, and said, "Yes, sir. Thank you for everything." His eyebrows lifted, expecting confrontation. When none came, he waved me out of his office. I walked to my desk without a word and packed the files that actually mattered to me. My hands were calm, though my heart raced. My phone buzzed, a reminder for an upcoming Denver trip. I silenced it. No yelling, no theatrics. Just a quiet decision settling into my chest. Hours later, at 9:15 p.m., I made one phone call. No script, no rehearsal. I simply dialed Horizon Tech Solutions and asked for the person who had trusted me the longest. By sunrise, Landmark Vista Marketing was sending frantic internal emails about contracts falling apart. Dale sent 2 urgent messages back to back. I didn't open a single one. The strange part? It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like taking a deep breath after years of holding my lungs tight. 5 years of airport lounges, late-night negotiations, and pitching in unfamiliar conference rooms had honed my skills. Maybe too well, because the company had forgotten there was a person behind the performance. I closed my laptop and leaned back, letting the silence settle. Dale thought my smile was surrender. He had no idea it was the start of the end. I used to believe the work itself mattered enough to endure everything, but I had finally learned otherwise. That mindset carried me through more trips than I can even remember. And it all started long before yesterday's ultimatum. Looking back, those years blurred together. Check-ins, boarding passes, and conversations over lukewarm coffee. I used to joke that I spent more time in airport terminals than in my own Portland apartment. It wasn't really a joke. Most mornings began with a client call before sunrise. "Rowan, can we move the meeting up?" "Rowan, we need you in Dallas by tomorrow." I always said yes. That's how I earned trust. People worked with Landmark Vista because they knew I'd show up, not because the company on my business card mattered. During a late-night trip to Chicago, a client named Marta leaned across the conference table. "You know," she said quietly, almost apologetically, "half the reason I renewed this contract was because you understand what we're trying to build." I could tell she understood how little recognition I received at home. I brought in millions of dollars in revenue, yet leadership's acknowledgement came in a brief email or a nod in the hallway. I kept pushing because I believed the work mattered, and because I thought loyalty would eventually be rewarded. That belief wore down, slowly, almost imperceptibly. One afternoon, while grabbing my laptop from the shared workspace, my coworker Jonah approached. He lowered his voice as soon as he said my name. "Rowan, have you heard anything about the restructuring?" I frowned. "What restructuring?" He glanced down the hallway like we were doing something illicit. "Management's reviewing travel budgets. Yours is at the top of the list. Dale's been in finance all week." My jaw clenched before I even realized why. My trips are essential. They know that. Jonah gave a helpless shrug. "Just thought you should know." It was one of the first cracks in the foundation. The moment I realized the numbers I delivered didn't shield me. The road had given me everything I'd built, and now it was slowly becoming the reason they wanted to take it away. The meeting began like any other. Dale stood at the front of the conference room. Everyone else pretended to take notes. I slid into a seat near the end of the table, still shaking off a red-eye from Phoenix. Dale clicked through a slideshow packed with figures until he stopped on a slide titled Excess Spending. He didn't glance at anyone else as he spoke. "Some of you are treating travel like a personal playground." Then his gaze locked on me. "Rowan's trips, for example, have become a financial burden on this department." The room went completely silent. Jonah swallowed hard beside me. A few people stared at their laptops. No one spoke. I kept my expression neutral. "If there's a concern, we can review the details privately." Dale crossed his arms. "The details have already been reviewed. Finance flagged 3 of your recent trips as unnecessary." That belief carried me through more trips than I could count. And it all started long before yesterday's ultimatum. When I think back on those years, it blurs into a string of check-ins, boarding passes, and conversations over lukewarm coffee. I used to joke that I spent more time in airport terminals than in my Portland apartment. It wasn't really a joke. Most of my days began with a client call before sunrise. Rowan, can we move the meeting up? Or Rowan, we need you in Dallas by tomorrow. I always said yes. That's how I built trust. People worked with Landmark Vista because they knew I would show up, not because of the company name on my business card. During one late-night trip to Chicago, a client named Marta leaned across the conference table. You know, she said softly, almost apologetically, half the reason I renewed this contract is because you understand what we're trying to build. She spoke like she knew how little recognition I got back home. I brought in millions in revenue, yet leadership acknowledged it with a brief email or a nod in the hallway. I kept going because I believed the work mattered, and I thought loyalty would eventually be returned. That belief eroded slower than I realized. One afternoon, while grabbing my laptop from the shared workspace, Jonah approached me. He lowered his voice immediately. Rowan, have you heard anything about the restructuring? I frowned. What restructuring? He glanced down the hallway, as if we were doing something dangerous. Management is reviewing travel budgets. Yours is at the top of the list. Dale's been in finance all week. My jaw tightened before I even understood why. My trips were essential. They knew that. Jonah shrugged helplessly. I just thought you should know. It was one of the first cracks in the foundation. The moment I realized that the numbers I delivered didn't protect me. The road had given me everything I'd built, and now it was becoming the reason they wanted to pull me down. The meeting began like any other. Dale stood at the front of the conference room, everyone else pretending to take notes. I took a seat near the end of the table, still shaking off a red-eye from Phoenix. Dale clicked through a slideshow full of numbers until he stopped on a slide labeled excess spending. He didn't look at anyone else as he spoke. Some of you are treating travel like a personal playground. Then his eyes locked on me. Rowan's trips, for example, have become a financial burden on this department. The room went silent. Jonah swallowed hard beside me. A few people stared at their laptops. No one spoke. I kept my face neutral. If there's a concern, we can discuss the details privately, I said. Dale crossed his arms. The details are already reviewed. Finance flagged 3 of your recent trips as unnecessary. He tapped the screen. Chicago, Denver, Austin. None of these required senior-level presence. I leaned forward slightly. Chicago secured a $200,000 renewal. Denver prevented a client escalation. Austin finalized a months-long partnership. Dale waved his hand dismissively. It doesn't matter. Those were her accounts, Dale, Jonah murmured. Dale shot him a warning glance before I could respond. My phone buzzed. A message from the hotel I'd stayed at 2 nights earlier. Your payment has been declined. Please contact your employer. I stared at the notification. The company card had never bounced, not once. I looked at Dale. Did finance restrict my card? He didn't blink. Talk to them if you have questions. The power shift was unmistakable. This was no longer about tightening budgets. It was about tightening control. And I was the target. The email from finance arrived that afternoon with a clinical subject line. Request for clarification. I opened the attachment and stared at the neatly arranged spreadsheet. Every trip I'd taken in the last 6 months had a red flag. I called finance immediately. Marcy, usually cheerful, sounded strained. Rowan, I knew you'd call. I'm supposed to request explanations on all flagged expenses. All of them? I asked. Every trip was tied to major accounts. She hesitated. I know, but Dale said we need full documentation. He's been collecting incidents. I gripped the phone tighter. Incidents. He brought up meals, flight changes, hotel adjustments. Things we'd never questioned before. He says it shows a pattern, she added. A pattern of doing your job. I said nothing. Marcy exhaled softly. I can only pass along what I was told. I hung up and forwarded her a breakdown of every trip. The $200,000 Chicago renewal, the Denver escalation, the Austin partnership. I included client emails thanking me for stepping in. None of it made me feel safer. Minutes later, Jonah appeared at my desk. "You saw the memo?" he asked. "What memo?" He slid his phone toward me. It was an internal announcement scheduled for the next day, effective immediately. All travel costs capped. Any exceptions require executive approval. My stomach tightened. Dale is doing this on purpose. Jonah lowered his voice. He's been meeting with upper management all week. Someone said he wants to show he can control spending. You're the example. I closed my laptop slowly. Everything I had built. 5 years of trust, late nights, contracts held together by personal relationships, was being reduced to color-coded cells, and Dale was using those cells to rewrite the story of my work. At 3:19 p.m., his message popped up on my screen. "Come to my office now." No greeting, no explanation. When I stepped inside, he closed the door behind me. His tone left no room for debate. "Sit," he said, not looking up from a folder. I stayed standing. "I can hear you just fine," I replied. He finally lifted his eyes. "Your attitude is becoming part of the problem." "My attitude or my results?" I asked. Dale tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "Your spending starts today. Travel costs cannot exceed $400 per trip." He paused, letting it hang. "If you don't like it, you can quit." There was no pretense, no discussion, only command. I let the silence stretch until even he shifted slightly. Then I nodded once. "Understood." He frowned. "That's all you have to say." I offered a small, steady, final smile. "Yes, sir. Thank you for everything." For the first time, confusion crossed his face. He had expected resistance, maybe desperation. Instead, I gave him nothing. "Rowan," he said, lowering his voice, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." "It already is," I replied. When I opened the door, Jonah was passing by. He froze the moment he saw my expression. "What happened?" he whispered. "Nothing new," I said, moving past him. "Nothing at all." He reached out as if to stop me. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. There was no point. The decision was already settled in my chest, clear and immovable. Dale thought he had put me in my place. He didn't realize that the moment I thanked him was the moment I stopped being controlled. The motel room smelled faintly of damp carpet. The only option I had after my company card was restricted. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, Dale's ultimatum echoing in every corner of the quiet room. $400 per trip. "If you don't like it, you can quit." I opened my contacts and tapped my sister's name. The phone rang once before panic made me hang up. I wasn't ready to explain why my voice trembled or why my hands went numb. She would ask what happened, and I would have to speak it out loud. I wasn't ready. A tight pressure built behind my ribs. I swallowed hard, but the tears came anyway. Small at first, then harder, the kind that make it hard to breathe. 5 years of flights, clients, and late nights had never broken me. My phone buzzed again. An email from Horizon Tech Solutions. "Rowan, is it true Landmark is implementing extreme travel restrictions? We heard something concerning today. Please confirm if this affects our support." I read it twice. My chest tightened for a different reason this time. Someone in the company, maybe Dale, maybe finance, whoever it was. The whispers were spreading to the people who mattered most. I muttered into the empty room, "They're going to pin everything on me." Another tear slid down my cheek, but I wiped it away quickly. This wasn't the moment to break. Horizon Tech had trusted me for years. They deserved the truth, not the polished version Dale wanted neatly arranged on his spreadsheets. I sat up straighter, picked up my phone, and opened the dial pad. No scripts, no rehearsals, just honesty. My thumb hovered over the number I knew by heart. I inhaled once, steadying myself, and pressed call. The line connected on the second ring. I heard a shuffle, then a familiar voice. "Rowan, is everything okay?" It was Daniel Harper, Horizon Tech's operations lead. He had trusted me through every expansion, every crisis, every late-night rollout. I forced my voice to stay calm. "I need to be honest with you about what's happening at Landmark." There was a pause. "Go on." I told him everything. The new $400 travel cap, the rejected reimbursements, the spreadsheet filled with red flags. Dale's attitude. "If you don't like it, quit." Daniel stayed silent. I could hear his breathing tighten. When I finished, he spoke slowly. Rowan, this makes no sense. Your work has always been the only consistent thing Landmark delivers. They're changing policies without warning. I can't support your project the way you need under these restrictions, I said. Daniel exhaled sharply. We already noticed a decline, but we assumed it was internal to your team. Every time you stepped in, things recovered. I closed my eyes. That's why I'm calling you. I won't promise support I can't deliver. Hold on, he said. You're telling me Landmark is cutting your travel so severely that you literally can't meet us? Yes, I replied. And they put it in writing. Another voice joined the call. Emma Ruiz, Horizon's chief project coordinator. Rowan, we heard rumors, but not like this. Is your position at risk? It already is, I admitted. The line went silent for a moment. Then Daniel spoke, firmer this time. We need to review this immediately. Emma, schedule an internal meeting first thing tomorrow morning. I'm on it, Emma replied. Daniel returned to me. Rowan, go home. We'll reach a decision soon, but hear me clearly. We value you, not the bureaucracy around you. I swallowed hard. Thank you for listening. When the call ended, I stared at the dark motel window, phone still in my hand. By the time I flew back to Portland the next day, Horizon Tech had already set their emergency review in motion. Whatever their verdict would be, it was now underway. Had been talking. I arrived at the office at 7:12 a.m., right as the first alert pinged across every screen. Notifications cascaded through the floor. Urgent emails after urgent emails. People were standing, whispering, pointing at their monitors. Jonah rushed toward me. Rowan Horizon Tech just canceled everything. Before I could respond, Dale stormed out of his office, voice sharp and frantic. Who spoke to them? Who authorized this? Someone tried to explain why our biggest account had walked out. No one answered. The room seemed to be holding its breath. My inbox chimed one new message. Subject line, contract termination, immediate effect. I opened it. The letter was short, formal, and impossible to misread. Landmark Vista Marketing has failed to meet the operational standards required for continued partnership. All active contracts with Horizon Tech Solutions are terminated effective immediately. My pulse flickered once, and I read the final line. We prefer to continue working with Rowan Concade independently. Before I could close the message, Dale snatched my laptop off the desk, staring at the screen. His face went pale. What is this? I told him the truth. They made their decision. You sabotaged us. He snapped. I remained steady. You restricted my ability to do my job. Dale stepped closer. Do you have any idea what you've done? This department depends on those contracts. I know exactly what they depended on, I said quietly. And it wasn't Landmark Vista. Jonah hovered behind Dale, eyes wide, as Dale struggled to find his next accusation. Emails kept arriving, each one confirming the collapse. The floor that had ignored me for months now stared, as if I held the switch that had shut down the entire building. I didn't speak. There was nothing left to defend. The loyalty Horizon Tech showed me was the same loyalty my own company had refused to offer. Horizon Tech's offices overlooked downtown Portland. Glass walls, quiet confidence. Daniel greeted me in the lobby with a handshake, steadier than anything I'd felt in weeks. Thank you for coming in so quickly, he said. We wanted to move fast. Emma joined us, her expression firm but warm. Together, we reviewed everything. The restrictions you mentioned, the pattern of interference. It lines up perfectly with the issues we've been noticing on our side. I sat across from them at the small conference table. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out. I didn't make that decision lightly. Daniel nodded. And that's exactly why we wanted you here. He opened a folder and slid it toward me. A consulting partnership. Full autonomy. You choose where you go, when you go, and how you handle the accounts. No limits, Emma added. No approvals for basic work. We trust your judgment. Their words struck a part of me I had long kept locked away. The part that remembered why I loved this work in the first place. I read through the offer carefully. The pay was fair. The expectations were clear. The respect unmistakable. Daniel watched me. Rowan, you built these relationships. We want to invest in the person who earned our trust. I signed my name without a second thought. I'm ready. Relief flickered across their faces like they'd been holding their breath too. When I left the building, I lingered in my car for a moment before reaching for my phone. One final step remained. I typed the message slowly, deliberately. I'm leaving on my terms. Sent it to Dale and copied upper management. Within minutes, a reply notification appeared. Not from Dale, but from the executive office. Dale is currently under review for mismanagement of key accounts. I set my phone down. The door behind me had closed firmly, permanently. The next one was already open, and this time, I chose it myself. I arrived at Landmark Vista just after 8 a.m. Not to work, but to finish leaving. The building felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had finally stopped shrinking myself to fit inside it. Dale's office door was half open. Voices inside were quiet, tense, unmistakably managerial. I walked straight to his desk. My badge felt heavy in my hand, but the moment I set it down on the wood, the weight vanished. Dale looked up mid-conversation, his expression tight. "Rowan, you can't just." "I already did," I said. The email had been clear. The executives flanking him stayed silent. One of them closed the door behind me as I stepped out. Jonah caught up near the elevators. "I saw the badge," he said softly. "So this is it. It needed to happen." I nodded. It did. His eyes held something between sadness and relief. "I hope they realize what they lost." "They will," I said, "sooner than they expect." By noon, a message was circulating on the company group chat. Unofficial, but spreading quickly. Dale had been suspended pending an internal investigation for mismanagement of key accounts. The irony was crisp, clean. No bitterness this time. I drove toward Horizon Tech's offices with steady calm. Daniel greeted me in the lobby with a smile, free of conditions or warnings. My first meeting as an independent consultant began with Emma handing me a list of projects. "Take what you want. Let how you want. We trust you. No caps. No restrictions. No one watching for mistakes instead of successes." Stepping into my new workspace, something finally settled into place. Something I'd been missing for years. The freedom wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, solid, and fully earned. For the first time in a long while, the path ahead belonged entirely to me.